I'm Angela Fairhurst, founder of Jerry Gadgets, a revolutionary solution for dementia care. Inspired by my personal journey caring for my mother with dementia, I developed patented sensory tools that engage loved ones, reduce anxiety, and create joyful moments without medication, providing much-needed relief for caregivers. Jerry Gadgets currently come in 3 silicone buckets with activities like flower arranging, shape sorting, and tactile fidgets, with more in development. Each Jerry Gadget is designed to stimulate the senses, fostering connection and communication, even at advanced stages of cognitive decline. Non-toxic, built to last, and dishwasher safe, Jerry Gadgets transform caregiving by promoting engagement, improving quality of life, and offering caregivers a respite from constant supervision. Discover how our innovative products can bring joy and meaningful interaction to your loved ones with dementia while easing the caregiver's burden. Visit jerrygadgets.com to learn more and start making every moment count.
For a limited time, you can get 20% off your next order of Jerry Gadgets by going to www.ssww.com Jerry Gadgets for Dementia and enter the special Love Conquers All's coupon code LCA20. Get 20% off Jerry Gadgets today.
When the world has got you down.
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hello, everybody. I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alls. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Donald. We're fancy today. We're doing 2 podcasts in one day.
Back to back with 5 minutes open in between.
we're like jet setters or something like that.
Yeah, or something like that.
Something like that. We're having a good day. We're talking to great people today. So
absolutely.
But what else is happening with you? Let's get a little personal. Anything good?
Yeah. No, well, it was last week I finally decided to take 3-day vacation. I don't know the last time I took a vacation. And we have some friends up who have a beautiful place up in Arrowhead. And so I was so excited, and we were going to play some golf, and there's a boat. And I drive up there. Beautiful. Spend the day on the boat, blah, blah, blah. Have a nice dinner, get up the next morning, and I'm sick as a dog and have to just drive home. That's my fun, exciting life. And somebody does not want me to go on vacation. Thank you. The end.
Me.
Yeah, you summoned me back. Come back.
Sorry.
There's work to do. There's work to do.
Sorry.
So there you go. That's my exciting jet-setting life.
Murphy's Law. I'm excited about our guest today.
I am too.
I've known, first of all, before I won't give it away, but I'll just say that I know her now from our caregiving community, and she's become like a soul sister to me. I just love her so much. And she's also in our documentary, No Country for Old People, too. And but we haven't had her on the show, so I thought, how is that possible? And so here we are.
Now it's possible.
Here we are. It's possible.
Hey.
So Don, why don't you give her the illustrious introduction?
I will do that right now. Betsy WURZEL is a retired licensed practical nurse and a caregiver to her mother-in-law and her husband Matt after he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. While caregiving for Matt, Betsy fought against the horrors of our broken healthcare and long-term care system. And now she's become a fierce advocate against ageism and ableism, especially those with dementia. Her enlightening podcast, Chatting with Betsy, is designed to embolden caregivers through their journey, covering the taboo topics which most people are afraid to talk about. She has also created a Facebook support group, #KickAlzheimer's Movement, which welcomes all dementia and is all about support, education, and inspiration. We love her spirit and passion, and you too will love the one and the only Betsy WURZEL. Hello, Betsy.
Hi, Don. Hi, Susie. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the connection problem.
That's okay. It's called a podcast. And so we're doing guerrilla production today. Look what I'm doing. I'm
Yes.
holding up my phone because Betsy could not connect. And so we're doing this the old-fashioned way. I'm holding it up to my microphone. And it's how we're doing it, folks. But you know what? It's all about the message and what we're talking about, the conversation. So it's good, right?
That's right. That's right.
So
It's all good.
So we're gonna try. This is like take 17. but I'm gonna let me tell the audience. I wanted to talk to Betsy about her journey as a caregiver, and with her husband Matt, and who had Alzheimer's. And Betsy was there from the beginning through the end, all the way, and continues to advocate for him in his honor to this day. So, where shall we begin, Betsy, with your journey?
Well, thank you again, Susie and Don, for having me on. And, Susie, I love and admire your work. You are a true Jersey gal, after your mom. That's for sure. How I became an advocate is something that surprises me still, because I was always very quiet and shy. People don't believe that, but it's true. But when you have to fight for someone, I had to fight for Josh, who has a cognitive disability. So that Josh started me on my road to advocacy, to stand up for people.
Josh is your son, right?
Josh is my son, yes. And I had to fight for him and to get the services that he is supposed to get. And then when Matt was having memory problems, it annoyed me that doctors didn't listen to us. And they just blew us off. And when, I think it was 2016 or 17, when I brought a smartphone, I went in my car. I said, well, no one's going to listen to me. I might as well go in my car and just let it rip. And so I went in my car and I started doing videos on dispelling the myths that Alzheimer's is the old people's disease. Matt was 56, the diagnosis. So that was a myth. And showing Matt's picture and talking about caregiving. And then I would post that in different groups, caregiving groups. And
Wow.
I was really...
You were a pioneer. I mean, now it's like that's the standard setup is in your car. So you kind of like were a pioneer in that, because now everybody does their...
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's funny, because when I look at Instagram, I say people are in the car. I did that 7 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Always ahead of my time. And I was shocked about the response that I received. And I always wanted someone to discover me, or at least have me on their show, because in New Jersey, I contacted the news stations, radio stations. Nobody would even respond to me. And lo and behold, in 2018, Jeannie White, who's station manager of Passion World Talk Radio Network, saw one of my videos and asked me to go on her show to be interviewed. And I was shocked when she asked me to speak weekly. And back then, Susie and Don, caregivers were not talking publicly. Nobody was speaking up. Yeah. And it was really hard to get caregivers to come on to speak up. There weren't caregiving podcasts back then. No, but you couldn't even find information back then.
So true,
like
Betsy.
Today.
It's so true. Because, I mean, when we started Love Conquers All, which was 2020, there was like honestly, I had to search to see what, who else was out there, because I didn't want to, do something that maybe other people, that if the market was flooded, and I myself couldn't find resource for my mom. And now there's plenty now, but
Yes.
you're right. It was really hard to get resources.
Yes.
Just that little, 7 years ago, you would think,
Yes.
yeah, so a lot has changed. You're right.
So I'm really happy to see that people are showing their journeys. They are showing their faces, their names. Caregivers are coming out of the dementia closet, as I call it. People with dementia coming out of the closet. And this is a dream come true for me when I see this on social media. And I have to say, I think I was a pioneer, because I would talk about it. And my friend Marcia Burr, she would say, we got to share our stories.
Yeah.
And that's what we were trying to do. And even though people could come on Jeannie's show and be anonymous, it was still difficult getting people to come on. And now it's like the market is saturated with these podcasts. But I'm very passionate, Susie and Don, about, with my show, Chatting with Betsy, is providing people with resources that I wish I knew about when Matt was alive, or that I wish were available when he was alive, which a lot of resources weren't available 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
And, just even like you had Nurse Penny on, I wish there was Hospice Nurse Penny 5 years ago talking about hospice, what to look for, how you should pick out a hospice.
Right.
I wish I had that information.
We just spoke to another amazing person in our community, PK Bevel, who is a dementia doula, for a death doula for people with dementia. And there's such a difference in how people exit this world when they have dementia and Alzheimer's, which you experienced with Matt, and you did not get the support you needed, right?
Oh, absolutely. I did not. Whatever hospice is supposed to be, supportive, helpful, I had the hospice from hell. Complete opposite.
What happened? Where do you think it went wrong?
It went wrong from the very beginning when they asked me, they said, can Matt talk? And I said, yes, he talks. And the nurse who did the intake for hospice said, I'll pretend I didn't hear that so he could get on hospice. And the hospice nurse who came to visit, she said, Matt talks? I said, yeah, sometimes he talks. She said, well, if he talks in 3 months, he can't be on hospice.
What?
I said,
What?
I said, you mean to tell me that my husband, who needs 24/7 care, hallucinating, needs total care, can't get hospice because he says something clear when you're here? That's ridiculous. And she said, it's not us, it's Medicare. And there's different protocol for hospice with a dementia client than with someone who has cancer.
Why?
So you're not allowed to talk. To be able to talk, that means you're not dying if you talk.
Yeah, I guess so. And then I've heard of this in the caregiving community, Susie and Don, of people who were denied hospice because their loved one talked when the person who evaluated them was there. And I told the hospice nurse, don't worry, Matt won't be here in 3 months. He's dying. She said, he's not dying. I said, yes, he is. Oh, he's still eating and walking. And I said, I'm telling you, get your head out of your textbook, think outside the box, because Matt is terminally agitated because he is dying. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks later, Matt was dead.
Wow.
They did not believe me that he was dying. They didn't believe that they thought they tried to talking about gaslighting, as you talk about in one of your shows that I saw, or it might have been the No Country for Old People. I think you're talking about gaslighting. The social worker, hospice social worker, tried to gaslight me. She accused me of not giving medication properly. She was talking down to me, and I put her right in her place because you don't disrespect me and get away with it. And I told her point blank, you better change your attitude in talking to me because I'm not stupid. I'm a licensed practical nurse. I gave out medication for years. I'm telling you what you're giving that is not working, and you're giving more of the same, which is insanity. And then she accused me, had the audacity to say to me, I call up hospice too much. Nobody calls up as much as me. I said, well, I'm my husband's advocate, and I will call up as much as I want until there's a solution to the problem. And you're not giving me a solution. And the witch had the nerve to tell me, when I told her Matt complained of a headache, she had the nerve to tell me he couldn't possibly have a headache.
Oh my God, I want to punch her so bad.
I did. I wanted to punch her so bad, but I'm not going to jail for anybody.
Right.
But I wanted to really, she was so sarcastic and nasty. And even at the hospital, because Matt went up to the hospice unit in the hospital after I had a fight for that. Because Matt fell. He fell twice, Susie and Don, and nobody would come out to assess him. Nobody would come out.
You see, Betsy, it's so weird to me because, it's like you know your loved one. And as I knew my loved one, right? And I had the opposite, whereas they were trying to overdose my mom with drugs as opposed to giving her, what she needed. And, I personally didn't think my mom was dying yet, which she didn't. From the time they put her into hospice, the only reason why she died 6 months later was because they refused to treat her stage 4 wound and allowed it to just, allowed her to succumb to it, basically. So I was trying to fight for my mom to have the right to leave this earth when she wanted to. You were trying to fight for the right to, leave the same thing, which was when you knew he was ready. And I said I would know when my mom was ready. And right. So, and this is the misunderstanding of our healthcare system in terms of dementia and Alzheimer's is that, it's too easy to manipulate the system to benefit them. In other words, I don't know if for a fact this is what was happening to you in your situation with Matt, but they may have seen him as being able to bill for a longer time, is saying he's not ready to die. We will keep him alive at least for 6 months so we can bill. Whereas my mom, because she had high comorbidities, they were like, let's push her out the door quickly because it's going to eat into our profits. Not to be crude, but that's what happens.
It's terrible. My medical doctor, I don't know if this is true, Susie and Don, but my medical doctor told me that, Medicare does pay hospice, and when they don't use services for that person, they get to keep more money.
Right.
And I couldn't get anyone to come out to examine Matt. Actually, one night he fell, and I had to wait for our son to come home to help me get him back up because nobody would come out.
Well, that's because that would eat into their profit.
Yes.
They would then have to actually, pay for that, and that would eat into their profit. And again, a lot of this also comes down to the confusion that most people have, even the experts, of what hospice is, what it's supposed, like with Susie's mom, they, in hospice, you don't get treatment for anything. Well, if it's for the comfort of the patient, then you get treatment. Right. And easing a bed sore would be for comfort. It's not to cure her, but they wouldn't even do that. And so there is so much confusion as to what hospice actually is. And I think that's something that you ran into also.
And also what is not, well advertised is your rights as whether you are the appointed caregiver or, of a person or the person themselves. You have rights to say what you want. It's up to you. They can advise, but they don't have the right to make the decisions for you. It is your right.
Right. And to think that people with dementia don't have pain, they're human beings.
Right.
And, I said to the social worker when that was in the hospice unit, and she had a meeting with me, and I told her, I said, I'm telling caregivers, we're not taking this crap anymore. You need to listen to us. When we tell you someone's dying, they're dying. When we tell you someone's in pain, they're in pain. I said, who are you to tell someone that somebody can't be in pain? Do you know what a dying brain feels like? I have migraines. I can just imagine what a dying brain feels like. We don't know. And Matt very clearly said to me, I have a headache. Why wouldn't I believe him? Matt never complained of pain. Of course I believed him. I gave him Tylenol.
Yeah. You don't stop being human. You don't stop being human when you have dementia. It's like you're still a human being.
Exactly, Don. And I actually have seen this. I worked in a state facility for the severely disabled. And the same thing there, the doctors would not prescribe pain medication with these clients having cancer because they think because they're handicapped, disabled, that they don't feel pain. I mean, it just isn't right. And I always fought for the patient, for the client. And I believe in treating people the way I would want my loved one treated. And that's how I treated my patients and clients when I worked as a nurse. And I was just so traumatized by what I went through and having to fight for Matt's dignity at the end of life. And when he fell on a Sunday morning, and it was before Christmas. And I called up that hospice and I said, I gave that medication. Matt fell out of bed. He talked all night. It didn't work. Are you going to come out here and assess him? Mm-hmm. The nurse said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? I said, well, let me tell you what I know. I'm going to call you every minute till you do know what you're doing. And in between calling you, I'm going to call up Medicare and I'm going to place a complaint. And then I'm going to call up your regional director and I'm going to place a complaint and remove Matt from your hospice. Oh, don't do that, Mrs. Sloan. Sloan's my married name. I'll call up my nurse manager. And then she said, oh, do you want Matt to come up to the hospice unit? I said, yes. I'm having chest pain here.
Right.
I need help. Would you believe, Don and Susie, if Matt had a 1-to-1 because he was so agitated, and they had the nerve to say to me, oh, Betsy, now we see what you're talking about. Why would I make it up?
Right.
Yeah. To what end? To what end?
What's the purpose of me making it up? And then the chaplain, who never came to visit us at home, happened to see me, came into the room, and I told her that I was very upset, that I think that Matt suffered more than he did have. Of course, Matt was doped up. He just gotten his cocktail of drugs. And she had the nerve to say to me, well, he's not suffering now. And I said, you're going to argue with me? Whether he suffered or not? And then they had the nerve, Susie and Don. When I look at it now, I had to have a sense of humor. They actually had the nerve to tell me he would be going home on the following weekend. And I said to the other social worker, I said, go home? I said, he still is getting medication through the IV, intravenous, and he's still agitated. So you tell me, how is he going to go home? She said, calm down, Betsy. We'll monitor him and we'll give him medication by mouth. I said, you know what, Mary, let me tell you something. I will monitor him myself. And if I don't think he's safe for discharge, I refuse his discharge. I will refuse to take him home because it's not safe. And she said, you can't do that. I said, you want to try me? Just try me, because I will call it Medicare. I know my rights, and I can refuse an unsafe discharge. And I says, you have no idea who you're talking to. And I met with the director of the hospice, because I had called her, told her I wasn't happy. And she had the nerve, Susie and Don, to say to me, oh, I'm sorry. We apparently dropped the ball. I said, my husband's not a ball. He's a human being. And you wouldn't accept this treatment. Why do you think I should accept the treatment that you gave my husband? And when they told me that he would be going home or could be going home, I went into the director of hospice and I said, if Matt goes home, which I know he's not going to, I said, if he goes home, and so help me, if an RN doesn't come out when I need one, my next call is to your CEO of this hospital or this company. And she handed me her card. She said, you call me 24/7, Betsy, if somebody doesn't come out.
But see, here's the thing, listeners, like you shouldn't have to fight that hard.
Exactly.
You just shouldn't. And that's not, we're already vulnerable, and like you said, you weren't feeling good from all the stress and just having to take care of it. And we all know that caregivers compromise their own health when they're caregiving. It's just part of the job, right? It happens, and we have to really take care of our own health. Otherwise, we can get sicker than the people we're taking care of. And
yes.
So, it shouldn't have to, that pressure shouldn't be, have to be put upon us. And you happen to be, as we said, fierce and fearless. Many people aren't. And many people also, when someone walks in with a white, scrub on or because nobody wears white coats anymore, right? But when someone comes in with a doctor's badge or a nurse's badge, many people just go with the flow and go, well, that's what the doctor said.
They're the expert.
They're the expert. And it should be that way. You should be able to rely on that expertise. But as both you and I know from personal experience, that is not the case in many, many, many situations. So, and not everybody has Betsy as their wife or daughter or sister or mother. And so, if it's us and we don't have a Betsy, we're up Schitt's Creek.
You're screwed. And the thing is, so much of these decisions are not being made on a medical basis. They're being made on a financial basis. Money is driving the decisions that are being made. Some of these people, they're being told what they need to tell you. They're not even making the decision. And it's a one size fits all model where basically, if you're in this category, they don't look at the individual and what their individual needs are and situations and making decisions on that. It's like, if they fit into this box, that's the decision that's made. And that's usually because of the finances. And so that's what we're up against. And that's what you were up against.
Totally. I mean, it's what I'm trying to, it's why I wanted to have Betsy on to talk about this, which you do in our documentary as well, because it's just such an important topic that, the ageism and ableism that accompanies Alzheimer's is so prevalent in our society, but in our healthcare system, and it's really used to their benefit, to be able to play into those stereotypes. So whatever suits them, like I said earlier, that you wanted more medication, you couldn't get it. I wanted less medication and more care in terms of the comorbidities that they had caused. And I couldn't get that. It was like, no, let's just drug her till she can't, basically till she's a zombie, when she wasn't, because they didn't want to take care of her wound and what accompanies those kinds of wounds. Whereas you are, and I knew my mother well enough to know that she needed that care. Whether or not she was going to die, she needed that care. Why would you steal the last whatever months of her life torturing her?
Exactly. Why can't there be dignity and make someone comfortable that that's what they, want? That's what I wanted for Matt. I didn't want him to suffer. I wanted.
That's
him
what
to
hospice
be
is
calm.
for. Yeah, that's what hospice is supposed to be.
A source of comfort. And the social worker said to me, "Oh, Betsy, you fought hard for Matt to come up here." And I said, "Yes," and I shouldn't have had to.
That's
I shouldn't have had to fight that hard and be all stressed out and aggravated.
No.
And that's why the holidays is like the worst time for me, because Matt was dying from Thanksgiving through, he died New Year's Day, 2020. And I knew that when Matt went up to that hospice, he wasn't coming home. That hospice was so incompetent, they thought he was just going up to get medication adjustment. That's how incompetent they were.
And that was in the hospital, right?
Yeah, the hospice we had came out from our local hospital, which is part of a huge medical healthcare system in New Jersey.
Right.
I won't say the name, but it's a huge medical system.
Right.
And their hospice was absolutely terrible. Actually, I fired the aide. One time the aide came. I had left the room for like 30 seconds. And that was next thing I know, he's screaming. And Josh told me that the aide lifted Matt up abruptly underneath his armpits. And then, of course, he was agitated. Then she had the nerve to tell me, "Make sure Mr. Sloan is medicated when I come." I said, "He was medicated, for your information. And now I have to medicate him again because you agitated him."
It's a vicious cycle, because that kind of caregiver that you're talking about really comes, again, it's a result of our system, because it's understaffed and undertrained, and people who went into this career, vocationally, who had a desire and a passion for it, are not staying because they can't do the job that they want to do, because they're not paid well, they're overworked, and they're just abused. They're abused. So you get these people that are doing this as a side gig, and they don't really care, and they're in it for their hours, and then they're gone. And that doesn't work for people. You need consistency when you're dealing with people, especially who have Alzheimer's, who's, you can't just have, these aren't widgets. This isn't like you're washing the car. This is you're taking care of a human being, and all of us are uniquely different. And, one person might not, mind being handled a certain way, and another person will. But that's what consistency of care can deals with. And that's where that's so important when it comes to, keeping the right kind of staff. And if we continue to allow this business model that is profit over people and is extracting, as much profit as they can from the system, we will continue to get the minimum care for ourselves and for our loved ones.
We'll be right back.
I'm Peter, owner of Peter's Fan Photography, and I want to talk to you about something important: preserving memories. Time moves quickly, and before we know it, those we love may no longer be with us. For the last few years, I've taken complimentary professional headshots of seniors in a local retirement home, helping families capture the essence and personality of their loved ones through beautiful photos. I've seen firsthand how meaningful these images can be. When I photographed my own parents, I realized how powerful it is to have these lasting memories. Photos that capture smiles, stories, and the unique spirit of the people we care about most. If your parents or loved ones are still with you, don't wait. These images can bring comfort and joy for years to come, whether it's for remembering silly moments or honoring family history. My message is simple. Get photos of your loved ones while you can. Hire a local photographer, use your camera, cell phone, whatever it takes. Just do it now. For more information, visit peterisfanphotography.com.
I filed formal complaints with the New Jersey State Health Department and with Medicare's Quality Insurance Department.
Mm-hmm. What happened? What happened? Did you get any responses?
I did get a response that they didn't see any violations. There was no substandard of care. And I said, are you kidding me? Someone falls twice and nobody comes out? And that's not substandard care?
Unbelievable. But it's not unbelievable, though. I say unbelievable, but it's not unbelievable because I've heard this with so many people that I've interviewed, for the documentary on our podcast. It's the complaints fall on deaf ears. There you go, Freudian slip. Yeah. On deaf ears, because there isn't enough. Again, there's just not enough motivation or incentive to do anything about it. So it's basically, it's go through the motions. It's all performative. And that's why things really need to change fundamentally, because the oversight stinks, the enforcement stinks, and, the regulations, which are there, are just performative. They really don't mean anything. They pacify, they mollify, the public. So the public thinks, well, there's regulations, and there's staffing regulations. There are, but nobody's adhering to them.
That's very, very true. Even the hospice doctor said, his hands are tied, and they had to follow strict protocol for someone to come up to the hospice unit. And even if they do follow the protocol, if Medicare thinks they made a mistake, Medicare will take away their payment.
Right.
And it's really sad. And it's really sad that people think that they could treat someone who is mentally disabled or has any kind of dementia any way they want, and it's okay. Well, it's not okay when it's my loved one, because I'm a mama bear, and they saw that. I actually had people coming into the room. They pretended to see how Matt was doing. They really wanted to see who the big mouth was.
You're lucky. I mean, I have a different tactic. I tried to not upset the apple cart too much, because I knew I could feel the retaliation, and I could feel them it's not even feeling, it was obvious. I'd walk into the facility and I got just stink eye from everybody, and I didn't yell ever. I was so respectful, but I was relentless, but I was respectful and kind. And I still got retaliation from the administration, and I got a lot of lip service, and I got a lot of gaslighting. So it doesn't surprise me. I got locked out of the room, for God's sakes. I got to the point where they were like, you're not allowed in the room, when they were changing my mom. And I was like, what are you talking about?
That's because they didn't want you to see the bed sore.
Yeah.
They didn't, they didn't want you to see it.
And I was like, what do you mean? I'm her conservator person. I am her legal, guardian. Yep. Well, you have to go out of the room. Bye. They would literally force me out of the room. And it was like, I had to, choose my battles, as it were. But God, we shouldn't have to go through this. So what do you think the answer is?
You know what? I think it's better. It should be better training, better education. And I really hope that hospices globally will start to change their idea of what terminally agitated looks like, with someone who has younger onset Alzheimer's. Not everyone's going to fit that picture of someone dying in a bed. They could be walking around and dying. And they need to start realizing this. They probably will in about 5 or 10 years. Say, oh, people with younger onset have different symptoms when they're terminally agitated.
Right.
They need more funding. They need more education. They need more staffing. And staffing has always been a problem in hospitals, I can tell you that, and nursing homes. It's always been a problem.
Right.
And I can testify to that because I worked in them and I saw what went on, and it's terrible.
It's terrible.
But better, I think better education, better, much higher staffing.
Right. I think too, for listeners, is that, it is that bias against, there's a fear that comes and a bias about Alzheimer's and dementia, and people are repulsed sometimes or so frightened that they can't look at it. And so it's like, that's why so many people with that disease are hidden away. And people have somehow accepted it, that it's okay. And convinced themselves that because of this disease, they're not really feeling it. They're not really experiencing pain or sadness or loneliness or any of the human things that make up a human being. So, and so I think that also, I'm on my soapbox right now, but I think that also a lot of this responsibility relies on the public to say, we care, we give a shit about people who, even though they may be dying in a year or two, well, so might you. So might all of us. We don't know what's going to happen to us. So life is precious when you have it, and everybody deserves the care and respect and dignity, like you said, to get what they deserve, which is, if you paid into Medicare and Medicaid your whole life, you deserve that money to go to your care and how you want to use it. No one's telling you how to spend your Social Security. That's your money, right?
That's right. That's right. I think doctors and nurses need to listen. And if I could give any advice, I would say, educate yourself, hire someone if you could afford it to help you navigate hospice, plan ahead, start looking into hospice. I nearly put it off until I couldn't anymore because I was at the end of my rope. But I didn't know about doulas weren't really a big thing 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago.
True. That's great advice. That's great advice, because I did the same as you. And I think that we do that for a lot of reasons, right? And for personal reasons, and for our own fear and our own, denial. Sometimes I'm speaking for myself, but I didn't want to go down that road yet. I didn't think my mom needed it, but I think it's better to be prepared, like you said, and know what you're getting into before you're in a crisis situation where you have to make rash decisions, and you can't make an intelligent decision unless you've done your homework, right?
Exactly. I'm thankful that right after Matt was diagnosed, he did a living will. So I know that, he didn't want a feeding tube. He wanted, comfort care. And that's what that's what he had. Matt had lost so much weight his last year of life. The neurologist said, oh, well, Matt could have the feeding tube. And I went, why? Why would I want to prolong his agony?
Right.
Yeah. I said, no, he's not going to have a feeding tube. And I really think that everyone should treat people with respect and dignity, no matter what they have and who they are. We're all human beings. And that's the thing that is so missing sometimes from medical personnel, is treating people with respect and dignity. And I've seen it when I worked in the state institution, and I talked to the clients, and they would say, Betsy, who are you talking to? I said, I'm talking to the clients. Don't you know they can't talk? I said, I know they can't talk, but they can hear, and they're human, and they like people to talk to them. They'd smile, they'd laugh.
And they can tell they can feel you're there. Just the fact that you're there makes a huge difference. They understand intent, they understand caring, and they certainly understand not caring. I watched, Susie's mom, depending on the nurse that came in, how she would react just physically to this either positive or negative presence that came into the room.
Yeah.
And I think that, a lot of that comes with, education within, it's not only educating ourselves, that hopefully that the medical field educates people that this isn't, they're not widgets. They are human beings. And there's so many lovely nurses and doctors who really do care. And the difference is amazing. But there's so many where I watched Susie's mom being handled, and we actually have some of it on video, and it's in the documentary, as if she was a piece of furniture.
Yeah. And my mom's
no
crying
communication.
out. My mom's crying out in pain. And I'm going, you're hurting her. You're hurting her. She's like, okay. I mean, like,
or nothing, or no response.
Nothing.
Yeah. And so is there anything that you feel that you would have done differently along your path? I mean, you don't want, with no regrets, just saying, now that I know what I know, is there something that you felt you could have handled differently?
Yeah, what I would have done was ahead of time look at different hospices.
Mm-hmm.
Education. Yeah. But you don't even know that that's an option. Susie didn't even know that there was an option for another hospice, or she could quit hospice. She didn't know any of that.
But that's why we're doing this documentary, and when doing this episode is like, I want people to know you have a choice.
Yes.
You're not stuck with that hospice. There's other hospices. If you don't like what's going on, you need to speak up. You know your person better than anyone else. If someone tells you something and you get that pang of like, listen to it. You know better. They don't know better. They know, medical things that are like by the book. That's it. But when it comes to common sense, I mean, we have to wrap up, but I just want to say, like, I had a girlfriend whose mom was in the same facility as my mom. And before my mom passed away, her mom did not have dementia. And she told me they're putting her mom in hospice. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. What, why? And she said, I don't know. They just said that she's ready for hospice. And, she had came from, out of state to be with her mom. And she said to me, we had coffee. She said, my mom was saying to me, am I dying? Because she could talk. She was like, am I dying? Because I'm not ready to die. And I told my friend, your mom's not ready to die. She's telling you. I mean, she doesn't want to die. She died 2 days later because they medicated her so much. And so that's the other end of the spectrum. So what I'm saying, and I'm telling you this because I'm saying, listen to your loved one if they can talk. Listen to your intuition if they can't.
Yes. Yeah, definitely follow your gut instinct, which I have always done. That's how I knew that Matt was dying.
Right.
I just knew it, but they didn't believe me. And that's the thing, that they need to listen and respect the family members And I just want to tell the audience, there's a lot of good hospices out there.
Yes.
There's a lot of nurses and doctors out there. I'm not knocking them. There's a lot of great people in the profession. Just like anything else, there's also bad apples. And definitely do your homework ahead of time. It was I knew I could change hospices, but it was really too late for Matt, for me to change. And this was local. And then I know that some hospices Medicare doesn't approve of. And so they have you over the barrel. You have to go where they're going to pay, unless you can afford out of pocket.
Right. And I want to reiterate too that, and thank you for sharing your story, Betsy. I want to reiterate that there are good hospices. There are great people, as I said before, but the system is geared towards making it very difficult for those good people to do their jobs the way they want to. And the people that are, and the hospices that are, family run or nonprofit, many of them are doing the best job they can within the system as it is. So we need to make it easier on them, easier on the on the frontline providers that want to do a good job, and that, and so that they are not feeling this moral injury, which is really destructive. And many doctors, many nurses are dying of suicide than ever before. So, and they're very, very conflicted, and it's just a vicious cycle. So, again, it all comes down to the system. And, but in the meantime, everything that Betsy said and that we talked about, I hope will be helpful to everyone listening. I love you, Betsy. We love having you here.
Thank you
so much. And, our podcast is all about love, right, Don?
It's all about love. And that's because love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. We thank Betsy for being with us today. If you like what you saw or heard today, then please like it and then share it and subscribe and do all those fun things. And we will hopefully see you next time on Love Conquers All. Everyone have a great day.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.